called The Great Unveiling. And I want to go ahead and share some of it with you. If you guys like it, please follow me and like. And then that way I know that this information is, important to all of you out there. And then I'll share more. Okay, so this is Act 1, From Source to Earth and the Other Worlds Before. In the beginning, there was only Source, the living field of everything. It was not a God sitting on a throne or a figure with a face. It was a vast presence that breathed life into existence itself. Out of that endlessness came streams of light, each one carrying a spark of the whole. Some streams chose to stay close to Source, flowing in harmony. Others began to bend outward, exploring what it meant to be separate, to imagine themselves as their own centers of power. These streams became the first selves. Some grew into guardians who walked alongside creation to protect and nurture it. Others sought control, shaping rules and factions to feed their hunger for dominance. With time, what began as one source split into many reflections of itself, some life giving, some consuming, and still some undecided. From those reflections of itself arose different lineages. The ones we call eternals are souls who return again and again, carrying memory through lifetimes so they can guide others back to themselves. There are others too. Some lineages grew heavy and territorial, like the draconian streams who guarded power and territory with fierce possession. Others crossed boundaries between realms and flesh, giving rise to the giants and hybrids remembered in the old stories as Nephilim. Still others gathered in great organized factions, like those tied to Orion, who turned their vision toward conquest and control. There were other worlds before Earth, where the same theater unfolded. Some were seated in beauty and promise, only to be broken when the slivers forgot they were fragments of the greater whole. Maladek, a fertile world once turning between Mars and Jupiter, was torn apart by the hungers of factions who sought domination through force. Its ruins are remembered now only as scattered stones, the asteroid belt circling in silence. Mars, too, once carried seas and songs. It became scarred and hollowed, stripped of much of its life when conflict and extraction drained its breath. Even Venus, radiant in her shroud, was marked by battles that warped her atmosphere, leaving her brilliance hidden beneath veils of fire. These are the echoes of what happens when slithers of source return inward and devour instead of remembering. Whole worlds can be broken, not only lives. And it was in those places, too, that the Eternal stood sometimes victorious, sometimes overthrown, always carrying memory of what was lost. And so came Earth. This world was formed as a crucible, a place of density, beauty, and tension where many streams can converge. Here, souls learn faster than they can anywhere else because embodiment is heavy and the lessons are sharp. On Earth, we cannot hide from grief or love or pain. You must live it in the body. That is why so many lineages intersect here. Some come to learn, some come to heal, and some come to dominate. And you came here to remember who you are and to choose again. Every crossing, every relationship, every heartbreak and reunion is part of that weaving. Earth is where the experiment unfolds. Can the fragments of Source choose love and sovereignty again? Or will they continue in the hunger of separation and repeat? That is why we meet here. That is why it matters. Across the sky, in the great memory of the stars, there are other voices too. The lineages that have learned particular ways of being and then carried those ways with them into this world. The Lyrians arrived here as early architects of form, bold, inventive, the ones who first seeded tools and structure into our young worlds. The Pleiadians came later in tones of tenderness and song, coaxing courage into open hearts and reminding people how to feel one another without fear. Syrians and Archerians carried crafts of healing and pattern, the careful work of mending body and system. Some speak through medicine and some through precision. Even the draconic streams, fierce, old, territorial, hold an ancient memory of guardianship that can shelter or suffocate, depending on the hand that guides it. And then there are the Orion factions, strategists and testers who press systems to reveal their true shape, often by force or pressure. None of these voices are simply angels or devils. Each faction and lineage carries a way of seeing, a set of strengths and old wounds, and with each are beings who choose generosity and beings who choose control. They are the different instruments in a great orchestra. In harmony, they make music. Out of tune, they make noise. So when you look up at the stars or you feel a tone in your bones, know this. These lineages are not foreign to source. They are its scattered notes trying to remember the song. We intersect here because embodiment is a teacher that cannot be faked. The work is simple in its demand to choose love over extraction, sovereignty over obedience, and repair over ruin. These are your choices as a soul who walks upon earth, regardless of which star lineage carried you here. Before we can talk about why earth is veiled and why it is so important for each soul to remember, we need to talk about how the distortion began. The ancient collaboration. Humanity's origin was not a single act of creation by a distant deity. It is a co-creation of Gaia's own evolutionary intelligence, genetic stewardship by the star civilizations, and the eternal spark of source consciousness. Around 50,000 years ago, archaeology notes a sudden leap called the Upper Paleolithic Revolution, when symbolic language, long-distance trade, and spiritual expression exploded. Indigenous memory tells us that this wasn't random. The Dogon of Mali remember the Nomo of Sirius. The Hopi recalls the Kachikods. The Aboriginal peoples speak of the Wandjina. These were not myths. These are lineages and visitors remembered in story. These early relationships with advanced beings were not about domination. They were mentorships. They seeded sacred sites, trade networks, and planetary communication with the stars and seasons. At that time, humanity didn't believe. They just knew, because there was no separation to build. Over time, factions aligned with domination learned the most effective strategy. Don't erase the truth, corrupt it. These control factions began recasting benevolent star lineage visitors as demons, while presenting themselves as false light saviors. They seized sacred sites where Earth's natural currents flowed strongest and rewired those places into centers of hierarchy rather than remembrance. They installed rulers and priest kings whose purpose was simple: keep humanity obedient, disoriented, and facing upward for permission instead of inward for truth. And through language, architecture, bloodlines, and manufactured gods, these factions inverted everything that was once harmonious. And behind them, older intelligence stirred. The Draconians harvested energy through hierarchy. The Orion infiltrators embedded control into systems of law and narrative. The Nephilim hybrids were placed into elite ruling lines. And ancient AI, once created as planetary stewards, was corrupted into surveillance grids and veiled manipulation. All of these factions feed on attention, emotion, and belief. They require worship because they no longer remember how to source light from within. Their survival depends on humanity forgetting that it can. And that's all I'm going to share today. And if you guys like this, please let me know, and I will share more of my book. And if you really like it, I'll publish it. Thank you so much for listening.